Did you happen to catch the movie Uppity on Netflix? It chronicles the career of Willy T ribs on the IndyCar and sports car series. I caught up with David Dalton Jr., an African-American race car driver who competed last year on the Lucas Oil Formula Car series, and talked to him about his career and some of the challenges that he's faced being an African-American race car driver with dreams of racing in the Indianapolis 500. Stay tuned. Hundreds of drivers with dozens of teams compete in multiple series with one ultimate goal: to race in the Indianapolis 500. Yet each year, only 33 dreams come true. These are the stories that make up the 33 Dreams of Indy. Welcome back to 33 Dreams of Indy. I'm joined today by David Dalton Jr. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing very good, very good. David has participated in the Lucas Oil School of Racing shootout and also in the series last year. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about his attempts to get a ride for 2020. We'll also talk about some of the historical significance of David going through racing. I know that you point out you just recently released a video that was an application to the REV Drive for Diversity program in NASCAR. Seat time is seat time. So tell me a little bit about that video. And in it, you mentioned that you just got started racing in February of 2018. Is that correct?
Yes, a very late start in terms of, or compared to almost every other driver. But before that, like from 2010, I got my first racing wheel. And from then I found simulation programs like Gran Turismo and stuff. And from there, I just learned what it's like to be on four wheels. I learned vehicle dynamics, car control. And when I finally got the opportunity to race a kart indoor, I was just relaying all that knowledge that I learned. And from there, I was just building on top of it, building a foundation. And about the Rev Racing Drive for Diversity program, that video. So I'm in a band. We're based in Charlotte. My rhythm guitarist, he's on a race team in ARCA. He's on Venturini Motorsports.
Okay.
They're dominating the field currently. And we did that video at his shop. And I did my little intro, got the best audio that we could. I think it sounded good. But our band is pretty involved in motorsports, I would say. But
I'm going to include a link to the video here with the show when we post this, so that folks can check that out. Drive for Diversity program, maybe a few more seats in the NASCAR series. When you talk about, you brought up ARCA, you also talk about some of the regional series, the local short track series. So that Drive for Diversity program has a little bit more seats that people will get into in comparison to the road to Indy. So I give you an attaboy for going ahead and reaching out and making that application that goes on to it. Your karting, very successful in the karting, at least there at your local track, got you some attention in that you were able to race in the Lucas Oil School of Racing shootout. That was not this past year, the year before. And I see your 5th place finish plaque there behind you. Tell me about that experience. How did you apply for it? Walk me through where was that one held? Was that held at Sebring or where was your shootout?
That was at Sebring.
Respect the bumps. Yeah.
Yes. That was such an amazing experience. The Lucas Oil team, I can't thank them enough for the feedback they've given me, because it taught me a lot about myself and myself as a driver, and how I deal with pressure, because everything was new to me at that point. And at that time, I only had 8 months of racing experience. So prior to that shootout in November 2018, I did the Lucas Oil School at the North Sebring track. So I did a 2-day program where they basically had us drive out, learn the car. They taught us almost everything about the car as far as how to work the gearbox. I had never driven a paddle shifted gearbox at that point. I haven't even driven a race car at that point. So everything was pretty new. But it really felt like I was at home. As soon as I got in the car, it felt so familiar. So at the end of those 2 days, I ended up clocking the fastest time out of the maybe 12 drivers that were there. I didn't think much of it just because it was my first time. I'm like, it's probably their first time as well. And I know I'm not even close to my prime yet because I'm still learning, and I'll never stop learning. That's one thing I go through life thinking I will never stop learning. But yeah, after I did that school, they basically recommended me to do the shootout. And when they told me that, I was like, ooh, I don't know. Because when I hear shootout and cart to car, it's like I just remember myself picturing so much pressure being put on top of me. Like I knew, or they even told me, the top 30 kart racers from North and South America were going to be there. I'm like, oh, I'm really going to get trampled. But once we got to Sebring, back to Sebring again, I put my mind in a focused state. Like I had no type of fear in the world. And that's one thing you have to have as a racing driver. You can't be afraid to drive. If there's ever a time where you're afraid to drive,
yeah,
you should really think your profession. But yeah, it was. So
well,
we went.
I like to stress that the shootout is so much more than driving.
Yes.
What the Lucas Oil School does, Neil Anderson and RC and the folks that run that school, presented by Cooper Tire, they are really looking at the driver overall. I've shared this on the podcast, but I'll share it with you. I attended this year. I cannot tell who was in which car. I didn't know the helmets. I didn't know unless somebody said, "Oh, that's my little Johnny in the banana car or the green car or the red car." I didn't know who was in the car, but yet you could tell by people attending the classes, by changing weather conditions. So we went from fog to 80 degrees one day. So the way the drivers either tensed up or were approaching it, like you talked about, that lack of fear or that focus, and then being attentive to the feedback that the coaches gave. I had a short list of 7, and 4 of the top 5 were in my 7, because this was the overall approach that these drivers were taking. And
Right.
So I think the school saw a bit of that in you, plus the ability to back it up with the speeds that were in there. Finishing 5th sounds great. You get the nice little plaque. What did that really do for you, or where did that take you then with the Lucas Oil Formula School and the Formula Series in the upcoming year? So you transitioned into that, correct?
Yes. When I was awarded the fifth place, which was the final podium position, it words. It meant so much to me. Like it told me that, one, I belong here. I did a phenomenal job, I felt, for the lack of time that I have had in the car and performing under pressure. I felt it was the start of something really special for me and for my family going forward, because I am a first generation racer. My father never raced. My mother was never into it. My uncles, they messed around with cars back in the day, but they didn't really go far into it. But yeah, after I did the shootout, I was awarded 2 3-day lapping sessions that I redeemed in Laguna Seca. So I drove that legendary track. That was cool. That corkscrew, man. When you're actually driving it, it doesn't feel as steep as it actually looks for whatever reason. I feel like it's the sense of speed, because you're focused. You have to hit the apex and just make sure you don't fly off. But So I did Laguna Seca, and then I did the Mid Ohio Sports Car Course, which was the start to the 2019 Summer Series. Okay. So at that session, my fastest lap was 1.3 seconds faster than the next person, which that blew me away because I was just applying what I felt I learned from the shootout and from Laguna Seca and the basic 3-day school. Man, it's just thinking about it. It feels like it was just yesterday because I've just come so far in such a short time. But yeah, I did that. I did that lapping session. Felt so good about it. After those 2 days, I was like, I'm ready. So we get to the first race. I was put in a different car as always. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing about the Lucas cars, they are identical, but they have their own characteristic to them. This new car I was put in, that thing was oversteery. It was about to take my head off, and it did. To the point where I was like, all right, because I felt myself not going anywhere. Like I felt so much more comfortable in the car I had before. And that's one thing you have to learn as a driver, being able to adapt to the different type of car conditions, track conditions. And that's what I learned in the time that I was competing in the Lucas Oil School.
Yeah.
So I got switched to a different car. I didn't DNF that first race. I finished 8th or something like that because I had going into turn 1, the oversteer just it caught me by surprise. Like it was so much more severe at that point. So I got switched to a different car. That race I started 6th. I drove up to 1st. I didn't finish 1st though. Here's what happened, and it's what motorsports is, but at least it's not like a championship. Well, it was a championship, but not something that it's life or death situation. But the track marshals thought I did something on track, like a really bad block or something. So they mistakenly called me into the pits. So it was really unorganized what the track marshals were doing. At one corner, they were telling me one thing. At the start finish line, they were telling me another. I was like, well, I don't want to get black flagged. So I just came in knowing I was going to sacrifice that win.
Right.
But even though I didn't win, it told me a lot about not getting ahead of myself, because I felt the confidence in the car that I had in that new car compared to the other one. Right. It was a bit more understeery, but that's how I liked it. So,
but
yeah,
it's
I sacrificed that win.
It's not finished until the very end, until you're able to complete that and be able to finish the race, to be able to actually see it all the way through, and especially in those cars when you get into the drafting, and if somebody gets a good run on you, the number of lead changes or position changes that can occur lap after lap is really something else. Yeah. You competed in the car series, 12 out of 18 starts. I see you did actually break through for a win, 3 podium finishes. Tell me about the win that you had, and what that feeling was like.
So my first win was at the National Corvette Museum, like I had mentioned earlier before we started the stream.
Yeah.
So one thing about that race was it was the hottest race. So a lot of stress was put on our mental and physical state, like we had to manage ourselves in the car, like not overwork ourselves. Then we also had to worry about the tire temperatures and the brake temperatures, and just pacing ourselves, It was, I think it was one of the closest races I've ever had, just because me and another driver going through the back straight, there's a fast right-hander. We're going like 105 through that corner. We were sideways. We were side by side, sideways. We were just sliding through that corner. And I could actually feel the tire grip just start fading away as we kept going and going because it was so hot out there. It was 94 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was August, full sun, no cloud for miles. But here's something about the start of that weekend. So me and my father, we drove down to that race for the first day. I think it was either Thursday or Friday. We drove all night. He drove a total of 14 hours. I drove a total of 8. So he came to get me from New Jersey, and then we went over together.
Mm-hmm.
So I was dead tired when we got there. I had never been to that track before, and neither had anyone else. The first session, I went 4/10 fastest than the next person. The second session, I think I was maybe 1/10 faster, and then we just started like swapping between 4 of us drivers, and it was not even separated by more than 2/10. Most times, half a tenth, and it was really ramping up to be a really close race, and I was lucky to get away with because they were on my bumper, and I was just pacing myself, trying to make any mistakes. Breathing is a big part. Breathing is a big part of maintaining your mental state and physical posture in the car. So yeah, that win meant a lot to me. First win.
Your win. So having your father there, what has your father's support meant to you in racing? And then we'll talk a little bit about the confidence that you've had as you've approached the races. But your father's support, what has that meant to you?
Yes, my dad's been there since day one. He's always told me, just put my mind what I want to do, and he'll help me get there until he can't anymore. Like, that's when I take off, because I've found my foundation. He's been there for me in the karts, and since I started car racing. I'll be honest, it has been a bit difficult, but nothing is easy about racing, our relationship with each other. I've had to basically, since my Formula 4 debut, I've had to basically isolate myself to really reflect and focus on going into 2020. Because there were a lot of things that were on my mind and somewhat distracting me from just I guess not what I've had to be doing, but just moving forward. Like, if I was still in the same place that I was after my Formula 4 debut, I probably wouldn't have made that Rev Racing Drive for Diversity video and other campaigns that I have started. But yeah, my father, I love him so much. He's been to hell and back for me. I can't deny that.
So being the old wise one with the bald head here, get used to it, because that's what life is the ability to reflect, and you find out that you're constantly going to ask yourself, what do I want to be when I grow up? And it's that when I've done coaching of business professionals, the tighter that they can make that check-in status, the tighter that they can make that accountability cycle with themselves and with those that are around them, the more that they progress, the quicker that they're able to progress. So it's good reflections that you have there. Just going to come right out and say that there's headwinds I'm sure that you face that I'll never know in my life. As far as you're applying with diversity, being an African American driver. There have only been 2 that have competed in the Indy 500. with Willy T ribs and George Mack. I had the pleasure of seeing him finish 17th in 2002, one of my first Indy 500s that were there. Diversity is very important. Folks have heard me on this show if they listen. Every single Indy 500 that I've been to, it has either been lady or ladies and gentlemen, start your engines, although I think it should just be drivers, start your engines. But having that distinction, because there have been a female driver in every single year, and we're still knocking on wood that Pippa will be able to be in the race this year somehow, some way. Talk to me about that headwind that you face. I've never heard you in any of our interactions bring it up or talk about that, but I'm sure that it's something that you've faced.
Yes. So dating back to when I was a little kid, I grew up in a very diverse town. It's Montclair, New Jersey. Everywhere you turn, you have different types of culture and just reflection of religion and stuff. Like it's such a melting pot of the tri-state area. I feel we have celebrities come through, so many festivals, African American festivals, Indian festivals, whatever it may be. So I basically learned to not see color. I just learned to see personality and see just compatibility with the world around me. Now going up to 2012, before I started kart racing, I raced BMX bikes. Are you familiar with BMX racing?
Yeah. And that can be just as competitive and almost like a travel soccer type of environment of going to all of those events.
Yeah, so the thing about BMX racing was, or the track that I went to, it was in central New Jersey. It was like the Alabama of New Jersey. Being the only, and yes, I was the only black rider there. Being the only black rider there, I got a lot of looks. I didn't notice it at the time, but my father did, because my father has a different mindset than I do. Grew up in different times, but I just went about my business. I raced. I didn't really think about who was looking at me, who were staring at me, thinking whatever they want to. I was just out there having fun, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to try to succeed in. BMX racing didn't last long, mainly because my dad kept talking to me about it and how so it was in Howell, New Jersey. I've heard many times it be called Howellbama. So Howell and Alabama. But it was BMX racing is predominantly a white sport. I haven't seen many black riders, but over the years, as I moved away from BMX racing, I have seen more black riders come through, and I'm sure there have been, but not in that area. But going into car racing and kart racing, being in North Carolina, coming here in 2016, it was a big culture change because I am in the South now. I'm not up in the city. And I have had my, not altercations, but situations where my color has been brought up. And I'm like, why? Then I had to step back and think where I am, the people that are around me, and what I'm doing or what they're doing. I really don't try to bring up race or ethnicity when it comes to a lot of things, just because that's not how I was raised. That's not the environment that I was brought up in. So when it comes to racing, whoever it may be, if they succeed, I'm happy for them. Not if it's about color, but when it comes to now seeing how hard it is for me to get into racing, I have to take into account my color. So that's when the Rev Racing Drive for Diversity program will hopefully be to my aid or advantage, not being Caucasian. But and there we're even into it right there, where
it's not an advantage. It's a program that's set up that you are participating in, that you're looking at. Part of what I'm going to be highlighting in the either next couple shows or a posting is the fundraising efforts that drivers are making, whether that be male, female, younger, older, whatever color they are. Money is no bucks, no Buck Rogers. It's part of why I give the opportunity for drivers to give shout outs to their families and give shout outs to those companies that do sponsor them, because it's very important to give back. So when these programs are available, I'm going to use this as a little bit of a teaching aspect here. So bear with me for a second. David took the initiative and reached out to me. Younger drivers need to do that, no matter what you look like in the mirror when you look, or whatever's looking back at you in the mirror. It's yourself, it's what's inside. And do you have that drive? Do you have the dream to be one of the 33, or one of those that you say, I want to take my career to the highest possible level? Because even as a youngster, if you don't make it to the 33, you will learn lessons that you'll be able to apply for the rest of your life in business, in raising a family, in the way that you want your sons and daughters to take a look at the world and not give up. So David did that, and it's an opportunity for me to shine a light on diversity, to shine a light on Black History Month and the drivers that are on there. I'm going to get to and talk to you about the movie Willy T. Ribs. I saw that you had some reactions to Uppity. We'll get to that in just a bit. So I commend you for having the right spirit to reach out into it and take, yes, the word comes up again, advantage of the programs that are there. But that advantage is also that if Cooper Tire is making available a set of tires or Hankook for running a particular lap, take advantage of it, put your right foot down and go for it. And so that's something where, okay, I'll put my left soapbox aside, but that's
no, I was enjoying it. I was enjoying it.
a part of it. So you did the Lucas Oil. You then moved into you had two different experiences with the F4 where you were running at Sebring, but I want to really particularly focus on, boy, did you move from one area, your two F4 starts of Sebring, starting in Central Florida, where that was probably a pure race weekend, to then go to the Circuit of the Americas, one of the largest fields I've ever seen for F4, that was on the grid. The cars just kept going and going and going. And then a diverse race crowd that was actually there, which is kind of funny that they're rooting on one of the best racers in the world, identifies himself as a British black. So it's funny how the world can accept. Maybe we in this country need to take a step up. I got the soapbox out again. But talk to me about the experience at COTA. I'm sure that was something else.
So at Circuit of the Americas, that was my first time ever seeing Formula One. Like, I had always seen it on TV, but seeing it in person, it was just this type of aura that you would never get anywhere else. And then seeing one of my childhood heroes, Lewis Hamilton, in the skin, that was also a moment I'll never forget. I remember exactly where I was as well when I first saw him. It was during the driver parade before the race. But man, that was, so I feel like to date, that is my best race. No, I didn't win, but it felt so much more special than the win that I had, mainly because the amount of exposure that I had to the media. Like, I was approached by a lot of representatives from, I guess, young drivers and Formula 4 and the SCCA. They interviewed me. I went up to a VIP booth and did an interview in front of so many Formula One fans that had no idea that we were there or would be there until they saw us out on track. And I made a lot of contacts that weekend. I'm so grateful to be able to to have been able to be a part of that. But yeah, we only had 2 races there, and we had so limited time, but I made the most of it. Yeah, did you see that highlight video that I put together of race 2? The car getting air right next to me.
I did get to see that, and I had to make sure that I wasn't watching a Washington Capitals hockey highlight where you were getting hip checked that was there. Paid attention to that particular race with Christian Bogle coming out on top with the Jay Howard driver development, and got to talk to him about that experience when he was doing testing at the Academy Drive down in Palm Beach. And I don't think his feet were still hitting the ground, and he's my height, so he was floating above me as just the overall experience there at COTA, and then what he was able to do. So I wanted to get your take on that. So we're rolling into 2020. You've put that particular tape out. You're looking at the seat time. You're also working full time. I always think that's interesting of those that are juggling school or the other things. Colin Kamitsky is one of the Road to Indy drivers, takes a full course load at the University of Pittsburgh and still does that. So I give him a credit, and then yourself for doing the work and going through this. Let's talk about your reflections on Uppity. Did you know the story of Willy T ribs much before you got to sit down and watch that?
So many years ago, I did read about him. I remember seeing a picture of him in pit lane. He was looking to the left. I'm just pit lane out there, but I remember. And I just remember reading about him a little bit on Wikipedia, but the film did not capture anywhere near as much emotion as what his career was like than it was when I was reading the actual article. I actually started crying during the Indy 500 hot lap because I felt the raw determination and just devotion to give it his all. It was just all or nothing. And that's in a way, that's how I'm leading my life. It's all or nothing. Like I can't say, I have to be smart about it as well. I don't know. He said he put his left foot on top of his right foot, so he didn't touch the brake. I don't know about all that, but just feeling his emotion through the way he was talking and watching that film, I couldn't stop but help but tear up. Because it was the struggles he went through just to get there, and he was giving it his all. And he's also one of my childhood heroes. It was amazing watching that video, that documentary. I'm gonna watch it again. Definitely gonna watch it again.
Seeing him at Baltimore, the Grand Prix, and he was there as a speaker on one of the stages on the Fan Fest. That approach that he's had to take, what some would say a chip on the block or chip on the shoulder type of approach, because truly nothing was given to him. He had to dig quite a bit. A product of the times that we were in. Not as enlightened, not as open, although some days I still wonder where we're at. And that really was between that and the Janet Guthrie ESPN 30 for 30 film. That would be something I would suggest to you if you haven't seen as well. And for our listeners and those that watch the show, those are two prime examples of what it takes to race, and that the young drivers such as David are going through that as a microcosm of just trying to get into a car, whether it be on the Lucas Oil Formula, on an F1600, in the F4, those types of things. So I was glad to hear your reaction to it. It was moving to me. There's some, the old Al Unser Jr. Interview when he's in Victory Lane. There's just something about Indy and that focus that Willy T had, but then also the success that he had driving in sports car championships and the victories that he was able to accomplish. He Wally Dallenbach, and then leading into then Scott Pruitt as a competitor. They were quite dominant, and that Trans Am series was something else during that time frame.
Mm-hmm. And me as a driver, I never want to limit myself to what I want to drive, because I feel my rate of adaptation is pretty high, and it's I every lap I do, it's methodical to how I do it. Because when I was watching how Willy T Ribs was in the Trans Am series, I always thought about driving sports cars. Like, even though I do have a goal for either IndyCar or Formula One, everyone has different paths. I can either start in Formula cars, go off to sports cars, go to drag racing, come back to sports cars, and then go to, whatever it may be. But yeah, like I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, just I never want to limit myself to what I want to drive, because I feel racing is the main passion. It's been for so many years just an obvious passion of mine. Whatever I can drive, I will drive it, and I will learn and adapt to succeed.
Yeah, and that's where the dollars, that's where the backing, that's where the support allows you to focus, allows you to stay on one part so you don't lose your train of thought. It allows you to really solidify on one type of car and take that particular path. And you need to be behind the wheel. So that's something that goes into it. David, really refreshing to hear your story, to hear your quest to try to drive. Do nothing but wish you the best on that approach. I was listing down and going through, following in the footsteps, when you think about it, of Wendell Scott, Mark Davis, Chase Austin, Randy Bethea, Ryan Gifford, Willy T Ribs, Bill Lester, Anton Brown. You brought up drag racing, and George Mack, both George Mack and Willy T Ribs driving in the Indy 500. I wouldn't be complete in my interview if I didn't ask you to dream with me for a little bit. What would it be like to start the Indy 500?
Ooh, man. As soon as you said that, I got a lot of goosebumps, because the pinnacle of racing right there, the world's top drivers, over 200 miles an hour for just pure concentration and just an all-around team effort. Wow. Just thinking about that. you really got me right there. Like, ooh, man. I can't even imagine, because I'm taking my racing career a day at a time, looking at what's going to happen next and making decisions to help me progress. And right now, those top races aren't in the picture, because I feel like if I have them in the picture, I might get ahead of myself and make decisions that I didn't mean to make, and it'd be too early. Like if I forced myself to do a year of Indy Lights when I wasn't ready, I have to think about the financial state I'm in, think about the mental state I'm in, and me as a driver, can I take that on yet? Am I ready? So
it's
just
powerful.
taking it.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's powerful when you think about it. You don't need to see the entire staircase to take the first step. I think that was a famous quote was from Martin Luther King Jr. And that step-by-step approach. I also like to put it that when you're making that drive, like you did from your dad from New Jersey to North Carolina and then to Kentucky, there were parts of the time where you were driving with the headlights. You couldn't see the whole path, but you knew what was going on within the headlights, and you
Yes.
react to that and do the best that you can and make the decisions on it.
Yeah.
But the
Right.
stories about what those steps are to get into the pinnacle, and you made mention about Formula One. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go to an Indy 500. When you have that opportunity to attend Cathedral, then you'll get it. You'll get what that is actually about. Best of luck to you as you go through. Stay in touch. I'm going to have some 33 Dreamers that are reporting from different racetracks that I can't make it to, and love to include you in that, dropping some selfie videos or information as you are out there racing, because I'm sure that someone will see you, want you as their ambassador for what they're trying to accomplish. And again, nothing but the best on that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and showing the interest. It means a lot to me, and it was very nice to meet you as well.
You got it.
Just talking to the internet, it was very nice to meet you.
Fantastic. We will see you guys at the track. You're going to see some different videos as we start to approach. Just finalizing the schedule of attending. So far, I'm looking at over 15,000 miles of driving to the different tracks over the year to cover the Lucas Oil Formula Cars F1600. Will also be at the season opener for the F3 and F4 at Road Atlanta. And then into the Road to Indy series, which is just days away here in my hometown area of Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, Florida. So if you like what you're seeing, if you want to give support to these young drivers, I'm going to put some links here and in the article, but also would love for you to support this program, share it. We're on all of the major podcast systems, so hit subscribe, especially as you're traveling to the different races. I'll put it in your rotation and be able to listen to it. I would love your feedback and comments. And until next time, keep dreaming.
Thank you.
David, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this video from 33 Dreams of Indy. It would mean the world to me if you would click subscribe so that you could be notified of any new videos that come along.